The rural independents have identified a problem, but unfortunately looked, in my opinion, in exactly the wrong place for the solution. We have an energy security crisis, and the government have significantly contributed to that. We have an energy cost crisis, and the government have significantly contributed to that. But to suggest the answer is new fossil fuel infrastructure, which hugely damaging for the environment, does little in terms of energy security, particularly when you think in terms of the lock-in of it. You know, we're looking at countries spending billions of euros to buy themselves out of the type of contracts that would be needed if this motion was to succeed. If you think of the decades-long, you know, this is infrastructure that would last for 30, 40 years, that would take us well past 2050 and any prospect of delivering on emissions reductions targets. And does absolutely, whatever it might do in terms of energy security, does absolutely nothing in terms of energy costs. You know, do we get Corrib gas cheaper than we get Qatari gas or British gas? No, we don't. So Sinn Féin don't support this motion, but we don't support the government's counter motion either, because there's absolutely zero acknowledgement of the government's role in sleepwalking the state into this energy security and energy cost crisis. There's no mention of data centre policy. As recently as yesterday, we had reports that the energy generation being procured by the state to prevent power outages in winter 2023 will cover only about 60% of the generation gap that might arise. Why? Largely because of data centres. There's no mention that we have become more dependent on fossil fuels in recent years, not less, thanks to a complete failure of policy. No mention of government failure, along with ESB and CRU, to deliver on committed capacity. Capacity is committed and failed to deliver on. No mention of the failure to deliver on our offshore wind potential. If the government won't take Sinn Féin's advice on what needs to be done, there's an article practically every week in the Business Post from industry leaders telling government what needs to be done. No mention of the failure to deliver microgeneration in schools or farms or community centres or anywhere else for that matter at scale. No mention of the failure to adequately support people and to ensure a just and fair transition. Every scheme this government comes up with fails the equity test, fails the just transition test. But what is in the government's counter motion? Mention of a framework with 31 responses, and that will be cold comfort to anybody who is faced with the reality of runaway fuel costs and energy costs. So what needs to be done is the energy security review needs to be urgently concluded, and it needs to be published. It should have been done already. The government needs to set out a comprehensive and coherent plan to deliver energy security. All options on the table, but it must deliver a just transition, and it must deliver the most rapid and fair transition to a zero energy system, a net zero energy system. We need to accelerate the delivery of offshore wind energy by providing the funding and resources needed to agencies such as On Board Planola to ensure long planning delays are avoided. We need to establish a cross-government high-level task force to bring forward recommendations on how to lower the price of renewable energy here. Because it's not just fossil fuel energy that's too high in Ireland, it's also renewable energy that's too expensive in Ireland. And we need to draft and publish a national strategy on green energy. And in the first instance, the most important thing you need to do to protect consumers is to introduce an emergency budget that provides targeted measures to help households struggling to meet increasing energy costs. This government and previous governments have pursued failed policies that have brought us to the brink. People know what Amber Alerts are now for a reason, because they are part of the public conversation. That's an absolute failure of government policy to match energy demand with energy supply. It's totally within the gift of government to deliver on that, and it needs to do it. Gormagat.